today's meeting of the Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube for the general public, and all audio and video is being captured and recorded. Does anybody have any questions? If not, Heather, will you call the roll?
All right, Mr. Colby Burks.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Chair Ben Brandsetter.
Here.
Deputy Chair Lori Harper.
Here.
Chair Lucas Spencer.
Here.
Ms. Vidya Ravichandran.
Here.
Dr. Robert Stack.
Here.
Okay, everybody's here. You can begin.
Great, thank you. We want to welcome Kevin Weaver with us today, who is our new board member, who is not officially on the roll call, so welcome. Moving on to the meeting minutes from our August 18th meeting were in your materials. Are there any objections to those as presented?
Actually, Lori, I was not there. It doesn't show me it says all members present. I was not there. This is Bob Statt.
Okay.
And I did make that last minute change. I'm not sure it's reflected in your onboards, but I did do a revised version. He called me about 10 minutes ago and let me know. So.
Okay, great. All right. Noting that Mr. Statt was not present, any other objections as presented? If none, they are approved with the change. Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to the P20 initiative and education continuation resolution, which Ms. Amanda Ellis will present.
Good morning. I don't know, Dr. Thompson, if you want to share the overall vision that you've had initially and where we are with that, and I'll be happy to hop in, or what would you like best?
Yeah, why don't I give them a general or you give them a specific? ASI committee board members, as you all know, that for a while now, we've been talking about a way to connect everything from increasing college going to college success, and knowing that it was a pipeline and a process, and that we had identified several potholes as we've gone along these particular transition points from K through 3 and middle school, high school to college. And so what we're doing here is really closing those loopholes, filling those potholes. And the idea that if we can create a way to systematically think about educational success, to close gaps, to build teacher effectiveness as well as the teacher core, if we can think about how to make our dual credit a more powerful point of college going and college success, and if we can think about truly looking at each student through an equity lens and looking at those that in aggregate are being left behind. This is what it will need to be the case all the way through until they go into the workplace, into the workforce. So that's what this conversation is about. I'm happy to say CPE, we started the process by hiring a wonderful person from the second in command at KDE to kind of lead this effort on our behalf. And I'm going to shut up now and let her talk with you specifically about what our plans are and who's engaged with us. I will say that we've gotten buy-in now, total buy-in from the governor's office, lieutenant governor, as well as from Jason Glass. So everybody's excited about what we consider to be one of the more powerful things we've done in a while. So anyway, I'll shut up, and Amanda, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. So just to give you a heads up, I know Heather has posted the draft resolution in your database. I can't think of what it's called. I apologize. But basically it is in almost complete draft form. When you have 3 agencies reading through it, it gets wordsmithed quite a bit. So But you'll get the general idea. And what the purpose of the resolution that we wanted to bring to your attention that Dr. Thompson's been talking about for a good while, and why really I came on board is to intentionally and publicly have a commitment to P20 and really to strengthen the education pipeline from the very beginning to advanced degrees and into the workforce. And we know that we have to strengthen all parts of the pipeline. It can't just be one area or the other. But CPE took the lead through Dr. Thompson's leadership to really initiate that conversation with the Lieutenant Governor and with Commissioner Glass. As you all know, the commissioner is brand new. He just joined September 15th and was immediately brought in on this conversation and very supportive, very collaborative, and is really taking the lead from Dr. Thompson and CPE, which we are grateful for. That collaboration has not always been there, is having everybody on board. So that's very rare in a state, if you are not aware, and so we're very grateful. So the resolution basically walks through our goal of what we're going to focus on first. And the first thing we're going to focus on is really around middle and high school students, so secondary schools, as they transition into post-secondary school or post-secondary decisions, whether that's a 2-year institution, a 4-year institution to obtain a degree or credential, whatever it takes. And so Heather has posted on the screen our latest draft. They want to call it the Commonwealth Continuum, the Education Continuum. And basically it's walking through what our purpose is. So our commitment to equitable access to high quality education for throughout, that takes the work of the Department of Education, CPE, our Workforce Development Cabinet, our workforce itself, and many of our education partners. Obviously, because we need to increase attainment of credentials and degrees, we are behind, and I know you've heard Dr. Thompson talk about our efforts around the 60 by 30. We are making gains on that, but it's an imperative moral of what we have to do, what's good for Kentucky, and how we prepare our workforce and continue to fill it. We talk about the need for strong advising, mentoring, intentional outreach, support systems. Not all students have that. We have varying degrees of advising, understanding around that. And so these commitments, these public commitments are really saying that we're going to put an emphasis on working together. So one of the things even that we've started to do, Stephanie Mayberry's on our call, and I'm so glad she has been meeting with college advisors, and she'll talk about that today. But we also connected with high school counselors, and who coordinates high school counselors to even share common language, common knowledge of how we advise students and families, what we make available for them. If we have great opportunities, but no one knows about it, they're not so great. And so, or they don't have access to it, it's not so great. So we're going to be deep diving into that. Post-secondary opportunities for students, taking advantage of dual credit, looking at any barriers that are in the way of students experiencing post-secondary opportunities while they're in high school. We're going to be looking at that at the dual credit policy and bringing forth recommended changes from the Education Continuum Advisory to CPE. Since CPE helps to make the decisions on the dual credit advisory and gives input on that. So you can just see what the resolution pretty much lays out, that we're really looking on that successful transition, access, awareness of, and success in post-secondary institutions and the options that the students choose when they leave. And so you can see where it's going to come, where it says, therefore be it resolved, and it talks about CPE, KDE, the workforce development, and other policy leaders and education leaders within the state and nationally can come together and really push on increasing a high quality, diverse educator workforce, student and family support for successful educational transitions, and equitable access to higher education, preparation for career success, and really just even a state level unified communication plan. We don't have that. That is really unified and strategic in nature. And so we really want to bring those efforts together so it's intuitive for families. It is friendly for students from all different backgrounds to really encourage really obtaining post-secondary credentials and degrees to further their education. And one of the things we have to do is come together and agree upon some intentional efforts to do that instead of having fragmented pieces. So as Dr. Thompson said, the potholes, where we're going to be filling those in with policy changes, proposals, with communications and intentional collaboration with these partners. So it's a lot of work. It's the right work. We're excited about this. We are elated that the Lieutenant Governor and her staff are very supportive. They really are a great connector between early childhood all the way to workforce, since they have workforce development and the KWIB in their cabinet that they kind of oversee. And we feel like it's a perfect time for us to be intentional with our connections, and that we do a better job of strengthening our pipeline for all of our students. So I'll stop there. And Dr. Thompson, I don't know if you want to add any more, but we'll be happy to take questions or clarification that you would need.
No, Amanda, you did a good job. The item that we plan on doing with this resolution fairly soon is, and we don't know how it's going to be rolled out fully yet, because my guess is the governor will want to have some conversation around this. But it is imagined that the chair of our board and myself, along with the chair of the board of KDE and the commissioner and lieutenant governor at the minimum, and possibly the governor, will be doing a release, a fairly detailed communications release, that would be my guess. But the real work starts afterwards. And I just want to say that we are not fully staffed up to do that work yet on our part, because it means that we're changing the way that we're thinking about working at CPE to the degree that we're going to focus on this, because it's too crucial not to. So we will be filling you in on those details once we get it, but we wanted to make sure that you guys had a deep look and seek your approval for this action.
Actually, Aaron and Amanda, I'm looked over the proposal, and the first bullet points on, well, one is increasing and improving the quality and competency of a diverse teaching workforce. And then the year one focus, the first bullet is collaborative recruitment strategies for recruiting a diverse teacher workforce. That's all very good. And as chair of the CEO, I totally support that. However, just reading today's news in the CPE releases, one of the major concerns is recruiting diverse teacher workforce and getting them to stay. And I go back to even talking with our former diversity officer, Maureen Taylor Archer, and the key here is that the community has to be totally supportive, or has to have a similar makeup to support the diverse teacher. And how are we going to achieve that?
That's the work. I mean, you just laid out the work. Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is, as Dr. Stat so aptly points out, this is a resolution that says we're going to do the work. The work comes through truly, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's why we have Amanda and a lot of other folks that will be working with her from other agencies. But you're right, Dr. Stack. This is, now, do we have plans? Absolutely. I mean, the way that we design a grow your own workforce through using the things CPE even has power over to some degree, dual credit, the way we align our standards of admissions and placement with KDE standards of graduation, the way we actually go out and work with our campuses and their teacher prep system to make sure that it becomes a culturally competent system that would allow a weed-in process for these students to grow to become great teachers. We also will hopefully have some access to dollars. We call it, used to call it the MER scholarship. The legislature didn't fund it last time, but we hope they will this time. That will be able to be used to recruit those folk that we want to build in this. But the other piece is not just about recruiting minority teachers. It's also about helping all teachers to have a focus on all students from a learning paradigm. You know, they all come from different places. I'm an old Clay County boy, you know, I'm a country boy, and and I was raised poor. So it's not just looking at me because I'm an African-American male, it's looking at me that I come from a geographic region that I may not see the opportunities in front of me unless you really explicitly point them out and nurture me and mentor me to that place of success. So it's about all of those. And I really appreciate the statement that you're making, I think, Dr. Stack, about now the work begins.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on that a little bit, to your point, it is very difficult, and not many people across the nation are doing it well, but they're also doing it very fragmented. And KDE has had have had projects around this. They have created the teacher leader pathway that is specifically aimed at recruiting a diverse teacher workforce early on with middle and high school students, and reestablish the it's called Educators Rising, but it used to be the Future Teachers of America. So it's repurposed, and they have done a great job of reestablishing that, but they never have really connected with the universities. So it hasn't been a smooth pipeline to continue that interest from middle and high school into college. And so those are the things we want to look at with what was formerly known as the MER dollars. And the other thing that we have that are taking place in our state are partnerships with smaller universities, larger universities, and school districts to do like a residency. I don't know if you have seen the work that they've done between U of L, Simmons College, and Jefferson County Public Schools. They've recruited they had over 100 applicants. I think they took about 30 teacher candidates of color to fill a need for special education. And that seems to be going very well. We have things to learn from it, but I do think there are models that we just have not tapped into collectively to do it well, because it is not an easy thing to do, and you have to think differently. To your point, sir, you're 100% right. And so doing it fragmented and siloed is not working, and it's not providing the support that the candidate needs from the time they're interested to the time that they transition to post-secondary and really help follow them through for completion. But I appreciate your comment, and you are absolutely right. But this is something that we feel like is incredibly important from the very beginning on, to build that, to build a stronger teacher workforce and to build more of a diverse teacher workforce. We have less than 4% of teachers of color in our state, which is not okay. And many of our Jefferson County students, where a large portion of our African-American students are, never have any teachers of color their entire education career. And so that's not okay either. So we definitely have work to do, but I think collectively it could be much stronger and much more intentional. But I appreciate your comment, and you're 100% right.
Thank you.
If I may add on, it's not so much I guess it's a little bit of a question, really. So as we adopt this resolution, I'm wondering if, I'm sure you are thinking about tangible goals for attainment along the way, and there's really clearly no endpoint, but at least interim milestones and goals. And how do we track that, right? I mean, we've gone to a performance funding model on the other side, but for internal goals and what we're tracking towards, I'd love to hear how we're thinking about it, because otherwise you don't really know how to measure the success along the way.
Amanda, you can take this afterwards. This resolution ties CPE and KDE together to develop exactly those.
Gotcha.
Vidya, to be honest with you, this is a resolution saying that we're committing ourselves to do exactly that. Come up with strategies, the measurements, and then to create a continuous improvement model around that. So we will have all of that. And as a matter of fact, we have at CPE have already kind of developed our own way of thinking about these strategies. What I don't want to do, though, is for us to be unilaterally doing that, because it's going to take the partnership to really do it at the level of success that it's going to have, because it just, CPE doesn't have control over lots of these pieces, if you will. Correct. So it's going to take that, what I call that partnership and the commitment from not just our agencies, but from the governor's office and the legislature to do that. So that's exactly what we will be doing. We will have real measurements, no doubt. We won't do this without that. So I don't know if that
Understood.
helps or not.
That helps. Thank you very much.
I concur in our goal is to have year one goals and specific outcomes, to have deliverables basically, and how we monitor those, because the issue with the P16 Council earlier on years ago is that they didn't have enough outcomes and they didn't have teeth. And so that's why we're trying to restructure this to have an advisory that have specific goals and outcomes for either suggested policy changes or actual deliverables where it's tangible things that you can see occurring. And one of the goals is to report back to the CPE and the KBE on outcomes each year. And so to provide that that ongoing communication with the work that's taking place, what goals have been accomplished, and new goals for the following year. So there's long-term and then immediate goals and outcomes that would be established.
Okay, so appreciate those questions. Are there any more out there? If
I
not,
had one
go
quick
ahead.
question if we
Go
have
ahead.
time. Is it proving difficult to find these educators into the workforce, especially from maybe more rural communities, more low-income families, and other diverse educators, due to, as we all know, just the rising increase in higher education costs, the increase in student loans? Is that pushing some people away from maybe moving into a field after college that is stereotyped as kind of a lower salaried field?
Well, I'll let Amanda answer more specifically. One of the things I just got through having a conversation just before I got on the phone about recruiting teachers, especially from rural communities that I came from, to be honest with you. And there's several community efforts that are going on now. I can think of one in specific that is designed to do those sorts of exact things. So this is really, hopefully, not just connecting with the schools, but also the schools and other folk connecting with the people within the communities to build out several things, Colby. One is the value of teaching, the value of the profession, why they should think about it, the value of building a process of equity across all lens, geographic, racial, all those other pieces. So without a doubt, this is going to be focused on those that are historically, on everybody to be skilled up to the competencies they need, but historically that's been disenfranchised from teaching. And we can point to those are, even men come into play here, believe it or not, in the conversations we're having. So this is really comprehensively looking at all those, what I call potholes, that historically haven't been. We're going to look at this. I had dinner with Jason Glass the other night, and we talked about this in great detail. We're going to do this. We're not going to do it any way that it's been done in the past that hadn't worked. We're going to constantly look at what are those groups that we have to focus on first: underrepresented minorities, low-income communities that have been low in getting teachers into the groups, and men. So those will probably be three of the biggest foci we have going into this conversation around strategies.
To add to that, Colby, yes, this is why the awareness of, because many think they can't afford it, and there's a lot of support out there, and it sometimes takes a lot of support and mentoring. There are rural communities that have a grow your own program, but they've been so isolated without an intentional statewide focus and push on the how-to. And there are different alternative ways to recruit those folks. Many of our teachers' aides who make very little money have been teachers' aides for years and have some college experience who could complete their degree. There's lots of different ways to reach out to those. And as you know, probably in many of our rural communities, the largest employer is the school district. And they don't want to leave their home, and that's okay. And so we definitely want to encompass that and be intentional around that, because that's why one piece is just access to and awareness of what they even have access to resources. And we have to be very intentional about that, because they would not typically pursue it on their own or think that they can. And there are really a lot of opportunities out there, and we've got to build that awareness and the will to really be intentional around recruitment, and missing probably a lot of excellent resources around us that we don't even know. So absolutely, to Dr. Thompson's point, this is very much a big deal. We have critical shortage areas in our state that are elementary teachers, which that's the most we produce. And we have emergency certified elementary teachers in some of our communities. I mean, so we have work to do, but that has to be in relationship with KDE and the Education Professional Standards Board. So yes, absolutely. And it's a big piece.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, committee, we have a resolution before us today. Is the desire to adopt the resolution and push it forward?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second. Ben.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
like sign? Thank you. Motion carries. All right, we're going to move on to our discussion items, and Amanda is going to continue and update us on the academic readiness indicators. Thank you, Amanda.
Yes, thank you. So just want to bring this to your attention. I think Heather has the table as well, but this was brought to you probably right around COVID for this upcoming school year that we are in now, about the academic readiness indicators. And these indicators that are listed are what the universities use for placement purposes. And so before I came, Stephanie Mayberry and Melissa Bell, who are on the call, convened this group, and then I helped pick that up recently. And this would be for, actually, the indicators, as you see now, are what we have for this current year. The admissions folks who meet with us and the placement folks at the universities ask that this table not change because they're already in the midst of recruitment for next year, as you can imagine. And there's still a lot of unknowns with COVID and how they're delivering instruction and enrollment. They'd like to see these indicators stay the same for the 21-22 school year, so they don't have changes as they're in the middle of recruitment. This is a lot later than we would typically bring this to you just for discussion, but we wanted to get this done and to have any feedback that you would have for us. We are currently meeting with this group to discuss 22-23 school year academic readiness indicators and ways that students are placed in courses, whether they are placed in just credit-bearing courses or with co-requisite support. So that will come to you in March for the 22-23 school year. We try to do that well in advance as recruitment starts early. The other piece that the committee would like to extend is for the 21-22 school year to continue the COVID waiver of requiring the academic assessment for admission. Although ACT and SAT are offering test dates, many kids are still being bumped because of limited space, or they've had to shut down test centers because of higher COVID numbers. That has happened to several students where they have signed up for the ACT a few times, especially this year's seniors, and they've already been bumped yet again. And so it's still an issue for them to get their score, or to improve their ACT score, or to have one. So the admissions faculty or staff and placement are asking that the COVID waiver extend one more year in hopes of kind of settling things out to see what it will look like, since we don't really know when this will end and the impact. So I just wanted to bring this for discussion and see if there's any concerns that you all may have or guidance, and I'll stop talking so you can ask questions.
Amanda, I'm looking at this table and I probably should know it, but what is ALEKS, or ALEKS? What is that system?
I will be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with this. I have Stephanie online with me, but it is an assessment for placement purposes for course placement. Stephanie, would you like to add any additional info, or Melissa? I'm sorry, I didn't see your face in there.
So yes, it's a nationally used standardized exam. In Kentucky, well, it is a math exam. It's a math placement exam. A few of our post-secondary institutions use it, and that is why it is on the statewide indicators list.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it.
You.
Now we will move on to the data portal review by Travis Muncy.
Hello and good morning. First, I just wanted to thank the committee for giving our unit the opportunity to kind of show off some of the work that we've been doing the last few months. So let me just go ahead and share my screen here and we'll get started. So are you guys able to see it? Okay. So before we go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's very small on my screen.
Oh, okay. Let's zoom in a little bit. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So before we get started with the upcoming transfer dashboard, first I wanted to just give an update on our data portal as a whole. Basically, we have published a new version of the data portal. It looks pretty much the same as it did before, but the power of this is it's actually now fully enclosed within the Tableau server infrastructure. So what this allows us to do is to update dashboards more quickly, deploy dashboards more quickly, and eventually get to the point this actually allows us to eventually completely automate the information cycle process. And what that means is we can automate from collection to visualization. And Tableau server gives us that ability using automated data updates, and we can actually employ that within our infrastructure. And that's where we hope to eventually get to increase our efficiency using, technology with tools like Tableau server, SQL server, and to kind of integrate those tools to make us as efficient as possible. But it's the new data portal still has all of the dashboards that we had before. It also has all of the different, all of the different links that it did before. So now when you do go to data from the cpe.ky.gov website, it will redirect you here. And just wanted to, I know we were speaking about dual credit before. We do have a completely updated dual credit dashboard. So if you all get time to go take a look at that, it has been completely revamped. I'm gonna wait for it to load here. There we go. Yeah. So, when you guys get time, you can go out and take a look at it. Just wanted to let you know that dual credit has been completely updated, revamped, and so has preliminary enrollment. So we do have preliminary enrollment out on the dashboard or the data portal now as well. We are currently collecting fall enrollment, so we should have that updated in the next month or so within the normal enrollment dashboard. But not to get too off focus, like I said, just wanted to let you all know that the dashboard, the data center has been updated. It now is fully within Tableau server, and hopefully that'll give us, more ability to integrate and automate within our own internal processes. So the transfer dashboard within the next couple of weeks, we do hope to add to the data center. So we'll move on to the transfer dashboard here. I'm sorry, my sizing got all out of whack here. Let me get it back to where it needs to be. Okay, so this is the new transfer dashboard. The reason that we created the dashboard was to actually replace the Kentucky transfer feedback report. Now, the feedback report did really well for what it was, but as is the nature with any report, it is very limited in scope. So you can really only focus on one use case. In the transfer student feedback reports case, that was usually transfers from KCTCS four-year public, with some very specific descriptive statistics around that, and also some very specific metrics around that. So we've actually received a lot of feedback for a transfer report or a transfer dashboard from both our four-year public and our two-year public institutions, just to kind of, make the, the process easier, and also increase the scope of, what information could be extracted, as far as transfer students go. So this is the new transfer. This is the new transfer dashboard. Like I said, is to replace the feedback report. Basically, the dashboard is designed, and it was designed in conjunction with KCTCS. We know they're the, I guess, super users when it comes to a lot of the dashboards, especially when it comes to transfer students, because they do receive a lot of transfer students from four-year public. And what we've done is we've created the ability to not only see, the overall summary of transfers within a year, but also to show trends, and to be able to see some of these very specific and important metrics around transfer students. And like I said, these metrics were discussed with KCTCS on what would be most important. But so we'll go through a quick use case, and we'll stick with the KCTCS 2 four-year public since it's probably our most common use case. So say for academic year 1920, if we wanted to be able to see students coming from KCTCS, we can just unselect these other sectors and then switch specifically to KCTCS and then add some years here. Oh, okay. Maybe if I changed it to four-year public, we'd be able to see. Okay, and now we can see a clear trend, of what's happened over the past 5 years. And just from, a quick analysis, you can see that not a large proportion, but the trend is going slowly down for transfers from Sector 2 to Sector 4, KCTCS to four-year public institutions. And what we can even do is we can get down to the institution level and look at trends on the dashboard. So say that we wanted to see what students were transferring from Bluegrass Community College to, say, the University of Kentucky. And see, so you can get very specific with your use case. And this is really where something like a dashboard, shines more over, say, a PDF report. Now, in a report, you are able to add narrative, around kind of outcomes. But from the feedback we received from the institutions, it seemed like they wanted more of a dashboard type application to where they could kind of create their own use cases. But as you can see, you can go all the way down to the institution level and quickly get a trend of, what the aggregate number of transfers look like. So that's the basics on the counts. Now, what we did also add, like I said before, was some of these important metrics around transfer students, one of which is retention rates.
Travis?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go back just a little bit. You had that trend data that said it's going down. Back a couple of slides where you said that the trend of KCTCS students going to public universities is going down.
Yeah,
but
there we go.
Yes, but in relation to the student population at KCTCS, that's also going down. Is the percentage the same, going up? Is the percentage of students going up or down, or is it follow the same pattern?
I believe the actual proportion is pretty close, but yes, you're correct. So the overall enrollment is going down as well. So that means the proportion, the proportion's not necessarily going down. This is just the overall aggregate number, but I would say it's probably pretty flat as far as the actual transfer numbers. Like I said, I don't have the exact number for you, but I can take a look at that proportion and see. In the dashboard, it doesn't have that functionality, but that's definitely a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And just moving on to retention rates, basically it's set up the same way as just the counts, but we can use the same use case here to where we look at students coming from KCTCS, going to four-year public, and then we can see the the retention rate here as well. In this case, it looks like that it's actually pretty in line with our four-year public retention rate. So it looks like students who transfer from KCTCS to public institutions are being retained the second year after transfer at a very high level. And like I said, we'll do the same use case we did before. So we'll go back and look at Bluegrass to the University of Kentucky. And you can quickly see that, students who transfer from Bluegrass to UK, they actually do really well and are retained at a very high level, even higher than the overall sector to sector average. But like I said, that's kind of where the power of the dashboard comes in, is you can get very specific with the questions that you ask. Graduation rates, basically we split that up between 3-year and 4-year. Credit hour to degree, and this is one of the additions that we wanted to highlight, because basically what we did, or from like I said, our collaboration with KCTCS, is we provide the non-transfer credit hour to degree that you can just use as context when you're looking at the transfer, the average credit hours to degree from the transfers, and we'll take a look at KCTCS to publics. And we can't add too many years here just because we have to give them time to graduate. And 1819 is probably a very small number of students that did graduate, but you can see, even looking at the trend of credit hours to degree, you can see that actually is a fairly bit higher than what it is just for non-transfer students. But like I said, you're able to take a look at any subpopulation within the overall population and kind of see how they're doing even at the institution level. But like I said, just a quick takeaway, you can see that looks like there are extra transfer hours that maybe weren't able to be transferred towards a degree, or the student did accumulate more credit hours before graduation than the non-transfer student. So just moving on, going on to average GPA. This is actually something that was specifically requested by KCTCS, and we will go from KCTCS and add a couple more years here. And what you can see here is this is actually calculating the student's GPA at the KCTCS institution before transfer, and then calculating their GPA after transfer. And more good news here, like you can see, it looks like this in aggregate, the transfer students actually do better as far as GPA after transfer. So in 2015-16, we can see that a KCTCS student that transfers from KCTCS to a four-year public, they had a 3.1 GPA prior to transfer, and then a 3.3 GPA post-transfer. And then in 16-17, a 3.1 versus a 3.4, 3.0 versus 3.4, 3.1 versus 3.5. So that actually looks very consistent year over year. That students are actually doing better as far as GPA after transfer, which speaks a lot to the actual KCTCS transfer student. And then finally, we move on to transfers by major. And really excited about this because what this does is give you the picture of from what major are students transferring to what major, at a different institution. And using the same use case. So we've got it from KCTCS to public. But the really cool thing about this is that it allows you to get very specific from a specific major. So say, for instance, you wanted to know of the KCTCS transfer students, those that graduate from a liberal arts and sciences major, what are they transferring into? So if we select liberal arts and sciences from our dropdown, and then we'll select all majors. And then if we sort, we're able to quickly see from KCTCS, and just for some context, a majority of the transfers are liberal arts and sciences transfers. That's a zip code that's used very often in KCTCS. You can get a quick look of what majors in the four-year public sector that these students are transferring into. In this case, it looks like the three big ones are social work as number one, registered nursing as number two, and general psychology as number three. So like I said, you're able to get a very quick idea of the kind of the patterns of these students, where they're going, where they're coming from, and kind of like overall transfer pattern. What we also did is we also tried to incorporate a Sinky. And if you click View Sinky down here, you'll actually get a Sinky diagram. As you can see, it's very busy right now because we do have this. So this represents all KCTCS to all public university. And we'll actually update the year here to 2019-20. But where hold on, we'll go back to it. Okay, there we go. So if we, what I like to do with the Sinky and where I think it's very powerful, of course, you can hover over and it's just going to show kind of those transfers and where they're going. Of course, it's very busy because there's a lot of majors. But if we get very specific, and I like to get really specific on as far as the two major. So say, for instance, we wanted to see of KCTCS transfers to public universities, let's say who go into the registered nursing field. So if we select registered nursing, what we're able to do is get a quick idea of the majors that that students are transferring from to be registered or to transfer to registered nursing programs within the four-year sector. And as you can see real quick, it looks like it's a pretty even split between liberal arts and sciences and the registered nursing programs at KCTCS. And then 9.2% of non-degree students. Like I said, it's not going to be as specific as what the table is, but if you want to get just a quick idea, a quick visualization, of majors, where they're coming from, what majors they're coming from, I think the Sinky tool actually works really well for that. And then you can just click back to table, and it'll take you back to the major transfer table, and then you have all your options back up here. But the final thing, before we release, we do hope to release this within the next couple of weeks. We are going to add some technical definition hoverovers. So, you're able to quickly see what population you're dealing with, how the metrics were calculated, just the basic technical information. So those will be added the next week or so, and then we hope to get this out, in the next couple of weeks. We are going to meet with KCTCS one last time, just to see if we've missed anything. We've kind of had them as our beta testers. So they've sent this out to their 16 colleges. And, they're looking for, any additions that can be made or any problems that they run into. But yeah, so we hope to get this out in the next couple of weeks. We will add technical definitions. And that's the basic of our transfer dashboard.
Great. This information is in the portal. So if you want to go in there and kind of on your own time, take a look at it, feel free, because it is really good information that helps you slice and dice things. Are there any other questions that we have for Travis?
Madam Chair, can I interject one statement?
Mm-hmm.
For over the many years I've been at CPE, one of the things that we wanted to do more than anything else is to have the kind of analytics that really pointed to good policy direction. And I have to tell you, over the years, I've been very frustrated. I am not frustrated now. We've got a team and we've got the abilities to really dig as deep as anybody would ever want to dig, and do it in a way that you don't have to be super wonky to make it happen. Now, to get down into some of the stuff that Travis got that down to, maybe you need to be more wonky than I am. But I just wanted to say I appreciate the data team, David, Travis, and all the group, because they're producing good, solid analytics that helps us to think about policy at a more complete level. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, appreciate that tutorial, Travis. We will now move on to student success, and Ms. Stephanie Mayberry will present today.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Mayberry, and I'm the Director of Student Success with the Council. I've been with the Council for a little over a year now. One of the charges that I received early on in my tenure was to create a Student Success Network. And a lot of that work centered around our Student Success Summit. I spent a lot of time planning the summit, only for it to later be canceled as a result of COVID. When we sent that cancellation out to the campuses, we talked about offering virtual options. And that is how a lot of the work that I've been doing was birthed. The first thing that we did was we offered a virtual professional development opportunity with Dr. Tiffany. Dr. Mfume is at Morgan State University, which is an HBCU, but what they were able to do at that campus was raise their retention rates by over 10 percentage points. And we thought that it would be very important to bring her in to let our campuses know some of the ways in which they were doing that. And that was most important because they had already started to move to an online virtual academic support system. And so they use a lot of the systems that institutions are now using as a result of COVID. They started that work early on. So it was well attended. We had over 100 participants across the state participate in that virtual community or virtual opportunity. And then we started the On the Menu series, which were shorter discussions that we had with some of the functional areas across campuses. What we did in those conversations was really figure out how COVID was impacting their area. And it was very different for different people. We met with mental health counselors, and they talked about the issues around counseling students virtually across state lines because that's prohibited by law. And so they wanted to make sure that they were still fulfilling the need for students, but also obeying the law. We also found that military students were working, or military student services were working with veterans, and they were seeing that those students were receiving different VA benefits based on modality. And so they were working toward the issues in resolving that. We also met with career services, and some of their concerns were how to adapt to an economic downturn and how to work with graduating seniors as they were looking for employment after graduation. So a lot of work from those meetings helped inform how we should move forward. We conducted a survey immediately after the On the Menu series in July, August, and the feedback was that the campus representatives wanted to continue to meet because they were learning from one another. There was a great networking opportunity, and it was ways to be innovative together, with students being at the center of every decision that they were making. And so as a result of that, they also told us that they wanted to have more targeted discussions instead of just a free-for-all. And so what we did with that is that we created topics around some of the things that we were going to do, and we released Touch Base Tuesdays. So one of the first ones that we offered was really about the professional and self-care. And we had balancing remote work with also NTI, because a lot of the professionals that were working also had their children at home. So they were working virtually and trying to balance both of those things. So we invited Dr. Ellis to come and talk to the group to really give them some tips for success so that they could navigate that, so that they could still do their work effectively and still work with their students on their campuses. We also offered a professional development opportunity on student activism. We really wanted to focus on channeling student energy in a positive way. We offered that professional development opportunity the day before the Breonna Taylor decision was released. And it was very timely for our campuses. And I think as a result of that session and learning ways to navigate that and channel the energy, there wasn't a lot of disruption on campuses after the decision was released. Ultimately, our goal is to create that student success network. We want to continue these conversations because we think that it's good for us as a council, as an agency, to know what's happening in the trenches with students and with those professionals that are touching those students. But we also want to create a student success advisory group that will help us develop a student success statewide strategic plan that will keep students at the focus, but also incorporate the voices of students and professionals on our campuses. So that's our goal with the work that we're doing, and we're very excited about the opportunities. And it is a fortunate consequence of COVID-19 that we were able to do this quicker than I had initially anticipated.
Thank you for that update. Does any of the committee members have any questions for Stephanie?
I just wanted to add that we have started a series of communities of practice around some high impact practices, such as learning communities and undergraduate research. And we just checked, and the request just went out a couple of days ago, and we've already had 50 people sign up. So that is a way that we are continuing to build this network. In addition, Dr. Thompson has a faculty advisory network that we are working with to help facilitate some of these groups and get the faculty perspective. I know I've mentioned these groups to you before, but I think it was very good to have Stephanie here to explain it and put it into context, and for you all to see all the good work that she is doing.
Thank you all. Is there any other business that needs to be addressed today? Well, if not, and if there's not an objection, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your time today so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.